Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I am Professor Robert E.G. Black, and this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening.
Time.
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
Minute 7 of Groundhog Day, we get a little bit more of the quote-unquote title song, Weatherman. And then we, as the van is driving into the town square of Woodstock, Illinois, posing as Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. The van pulls in front of the Pennsylvania Hotel. We'll get some interaction between Rita and Phil that will continue into the next minute. But the primary thing from this minute is we'll get some characterization stuff, of course. But the cool thing I really like is this move from last minute into this minute of the van driving around 3/4 of the town square. Or, no, I guess it only drives about half, but we see about 3/4 of the town square because of the camera angles. Because that is an important step. If you want us to be around this square, we're going to see Phil stepping into the ice by the diner. We're going to see him coming around the corner, down the block from the diner. We're going to see him robbing the armored truck, which is on the... Sorry, picturing the map in my head, going to try to describe it to you. Okay. The Pennsylvania Hotel is at the south side of the square. Gobbler's Knob is right in front of it in the southwest corner of the internal part of the square. There's a street that the van just pulled into town, which leaves at the middle of the square on the north side. The diner is to the right if you are facing north. The corner where the old man is at the end of that same block where the diner is, so off to the right. And the bank and the armored truck would be off to the left. We don't see much of the east side of the square in this movie. We get a couple angles of it because of where we first see Ned, for example. We see the buildings on the east side behind him. But the northeast corner especially, I think, is where they reserved, aside from the car chase with the police, the northeast part of the square, southeast part of the square is not really seen, and I'm guessing that's where they parked a lot of their crew vehicles. It also makes the town square generally seem a little more quaint because the center square in Woodstock is not that big. Yet it has 2 gazebos. We see the larger one in the film. We see it with people dancing on it. The guy in the Groundhog costume is up there dancing with a bunch of locals. And it's also the gazebo where Phil and Rita dance on what I call the date night sequence later in the film. Additionally, if you go to Woodstock, Illinois for February 2nd on any given year, the gazebo is where they pull the groundhog out. For their version of the festival, Woodstock Willie is pulled out right there on the gazebo. The year I went, they had Danny Rubin up there with him, and hitting a blank on his name, Richard Hensel? Forgetting what his last name is. He's DJ 1 of the 2 DJs, which we'll hear in a few minutes in the movie. They were both there that year, and I got to spend a little bit of time with each of them and talk to them, and it was very fun. I wrote about it in the blog. I won't get into too much detail of it here, but I have been to Woodstock. I have been to this town square, and I love this setup because if we're going to spend a lot of time here, we should know how things are arranged relative to each other. And with the panning angle following the van into the square and around the corner, and then switching to a new angle when they're on that same west side of the square, and then circling around to the Pennsylvania Hotel, is fantastic because it gives us a map of the whole square, and all of these places are going to be important. Pennsylvania Hotel is where Rita is staying, presumably where Larry is staying. That is where the bar is, where Phil tries to pick up Rita, where Larry tries to pick up Nancy, and also where the banquet is at the end of the film. The banquet was actually filmed somewhere else. It was filmed at the, I believe it's an Elks Lodge, or no, Moose Lodge. Moose Lodge? I think it's a Moose Lodge, which is about 3 blocks north of the square. And in between there is the space where the bowling alley is. We'll see more of that as we get into those minutes. And I'll probably talk a bit about the square because I have been there, have mapped out where the car chases go, and we'll talk more about that when I get to it. Here we're getting lyrics. Baby, I can warm you up. because I'm your weatherman, and then we get the repetition in the background of the backup singers, just ask the weatherman, just ask the weatherman. Main lyric guy, because I'm your weatherman, just ask the weatherman, just ask the weatherman, baby. And this makes the song feel even more generic than it already sort of was, but it's still sort of romantic and cheesy, and it does, I think, fit the film. We get to the Pennsylvania hotel, Larry pulls the van over, and we get them getting out, and Phil tells Rita, I can't stay here. Larry, of course, says, oh, prima donnas. Rita tells him, I'll handle it. What's the matter, Phil? And he tells her, I hate this place. I stayed here 2 years ago. I was miserable. It's a flea bag. I'm not staying here. I love now how she doesn't react to the fact that he thinks it's a flea bag. Like, maybe she's seen some photos or something of the inside of it. Maybe she's been here before. I don't know. Or maybe she just doesn't care. But she doesn't, like, flinch or grimace or anything. She doesn't react to the idea that this might be a flea bag. The place where she is staying might be unpleasant. She's just being Rita, the good producer. And I love that, because no matter how good or not she is at her job, she is trying. So he says, I'm not staying here. And she says, you're not staying here. He's a little surprised. I'm not? And she tells him, no, Larry's just dropping me off. Before I get into the rest of this dialogue, this makes no sense to me. Here's what's happening. Unless Larry's got some local friend he's staying with, Larry is dropping Rita off at the Pennsylvanian. Then he's going to drive Phil to the Cherry Street Inn and drop Phil off. Then he's going to return to the Pennsylvanian where presumably Larry is staying. Also, one of the jobs, I would think, that Rita has as producer is dealing with all of the check-in and paperwork and payment and all of that stuff for Phil, for the talent. So she should be this. Basically, this scene only happens because Ramis wanted a confrontation between Phil and Rita, and they wanted to show her being a pretty good producer, being able to deal with his bullshit. And this is important for characterization. But practically speaking, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. What Larry should have done is driven directly to the Cherry Street. Rita would have checked Phil in, and then Larry and Rita would drive back to the Pennsylvania. It's also, I think, very irresponsible. We don't see the entire distance between the Cherry Street and the town square. We do see that Phil has to go up a fairly long street to get away from the Cherry Street Inn and head toward the square, which in the cold weather is a bad idea. There is a blizzard coming. He is a weatherman. He knows this. Rita was just in the studio where he predicted a blizzard. Even though he said it wouldn't hit Pittsburgh, he didn't say it wasn't going to hit Punxsutawney. Not specifically. He does imply that or say that in a few minutes to Mrs. Lancaster. But he didn't say it on the news. So they should be operating under the assumption there's a blizzard coming or there's a blizzard nearby, so it's going to be really cold. It has definitely got some snow on the ground as they get into the town. It's rural around it, which means they would have seen snow on the ground coming toward Punxsutawney. So they should have gone straight to the Cherry Street, dropped off Phil, driven back to the Pennsylvanian for Larry and Rita, and in the morning they should be picking Phil up. But that's also a bad idea, because they shouldn't be moving the news van. Once they got this good spot right there in the town square, they need to hold on to it. So Larry, A, can't go pick up Phil, but B, should be picking up Phil, because that is part of the role. You don't just leave your talent stranded off on Cherry Street. That is, I'm not going to look up the distance now, but I've walked it. I've walked to Cherry Street from the town square. It is over a mile, I'm pretty sure.
Jumping in from editing, because I did bother to look this one up after saying it. It's apparently only 0.6 miles from 344 Fremont Street, which is the address for the Cherry Street Inn, to the Woodstock Opera House, which is the south side of the square. Although Phil always approaches from the north side, so we would have a bit of an extra walk, but not by much.
Yeah, I think it's something like 1.5 miles, maybe closer to 2 miles. It's a bit of a distance. I
guess in the snow, when I was there, or when Phil is there, it just feels like farther.
Because if you walk straight north from the Cherry Street, the route we see Phil take, you would get close to where The little arch bridge where Phil drives with the groundhog, he's under it and he's being chased by the news van and the police, or the police and the news van. That little arch is close to this street, and also the spot where he pulls off of the train tracks right before he crashes in the police car, the first car chase, are close to the end of this street, and then you would turn left and go over toward the square and then up. Where he crashes is literally just a block off the square, although you can't tell. So we're talking a good distance that they are making their talent walk and be on time. In Rubin's original, there was an awkward way of dealing with this in that every morning when Phil went outside, Rita was there to tell him to hurry up. And I'm like, hey, I mean, you're going to be there with him. Why not just walk with him? That was weird. But also, I think she smacked his butt every time, which was odd. Told him to get a move on. But in the movie version, they're depending on him to take care of it, and that's worse. Phil should be staying at the Pennsylvanian. Or they all should be staying at Cherry Street. And I would think they'd want to. Because this is Channel 9 Pittsburgh. If there is any news station in the country, aside from probably, at the time, Willard Scott, we'll hear him name checked later in the movie, but Willard Scott was working for, Good Morning America out of New York?
Wrong network. It was the Today Show.
Aside from him probably going to Punxsutawney, the biggest news station covering Punxsutawney is Channel 9 Pittsburgh, or whatever other news channels are in Pittsburgh. So they should be spending money on this trip. They should be getting all three of them at the Cherry Street, nice and comfortable, or all three of them at some place closer to the square, maybe not the Pennsylvanian if it is a flea bag. But I would think Phil is wrong. It's not a flea bag. In reality, it's an opera house, so it doesn't even have bedrooms, but in the movie, it is a hotel. And I would guess it's a nice one. I think Phil's just wrong. Now Larry's just dropping me off. I booked you in a very nice bed and breakfast on Cherry Street. He says, great. I think this is one of the traits of a really good producer, and it is. He's right. Even though he uses the term I've been using, talent. Keep the talent happy. I mean, he's not wrong. That is part of Rita's job. So in our measure of reality versus the film, she's not a great producer because she's got them making this weird back and forth trip with the van, dropping her off, dropping Phil off, dropping Larry off. And they've got Phil a good distance away. Even just if you take the distance in the film that we see and don't count reality, the Cherry Street is still at least several blocks away. Because we see up the street from Cherry Street. And we can't see the town square, which means that's a good distance. And when Phil comes walking around the corner where the old man is, he's coming from the same direction that we just saw them drive in the van last minute. So we know that Cherry Street is not that close there either. So they're depending on their talent to walk and still be on time by himself. Rubin kind of had it right in that Rita should be at the Cherry Street every morning to make sure Phil gets there on time. Although she should have been walking with him. Anyway, Rita starts to reply. She's going to say anything I can do, but all we get this minute is anything. She's an okay producer. We've been told she's new at this, so it's okay if there's problems. She seems like she's trying, and she's trying to make Phil happy. Just like he says. That's a sign of a good producer. That's all for minute 7. Until next time, watch more movies.
Knew you were going to say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, laughing, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?